Diana and Alexei had been married for 2 years. Diana was 26 and her husband was in his 40s. The young woman was attracted to Alexei primarily by his status and wealth. He had several businesses that brought him very good money. Although at first glance you would not think that of Alexei. He dressed modestly, he himself looked unassuming, and in other circumstances, Diana would not even pay attention to such a man. She had only worked as a model for a couple of years before, and had already got used to a certain standard of living. She chose only what she thought was appropriate for her level. So when Alexei approached her in a cafe, where Diana briefly went to get a drink, the girl did not even hold her gaze on him and refused to get acquainted. But then, seeing what an expensive car he was getting into, she herself called Alexei. After the wedding, her husband forbade Diane to work as a model. She did not mind. He fully provided for her. And never to work and still live happily ever after. That's what she always wanted. Looking at their couple, it was immediately clear that such a beauty herself would never fall in love with this man. There was nothing flashy about him. He already had just the elastic on his head. Diana didn't like going out with him, so she would often meet her friends in restaurants and centers. That was her way of spending her free time. Anton met her in one such restaurant. He did not even suspect that this beautiful girl was single. Diana always took the ring off her ring finger when she went out to meet her friends, or just to go somewhere alone from home. When Diana looked up at Anton approaching her, she liked him immediately. He was young, incredibly handsome in person, and his figure just screamed that he loved sports and spent a lot of time on it. He looked stunning compared to her husband. He sat down with her. They got to know each other and began to talk. Diane, without any sense of doubt or feeling anything wrong, left her phone number with the man she liked. From that day on, her affair began. The endless correspondence and phone calls with Anton turned into romantic dates that gradually grew into intimate ones. They met at his home or at a hotel. Diana, to the surprise of the man, tried never to stay overnight, saying that she was more comfortable sleeping at home. And even then, Anton did not suspect that she had a husband. Once, when her husband finally went out of town for a long time for work, she arranged that she too would go on a short vacation with her girlfriends. Diane herself, of course, went to the resort with Anton, where she spent a really nice weekend. Diana perfectly hid her secret relationship from her husband. She lied very convincingly and kept all the conditions in her head, under which it was almost impossible to suspect her. Anna was comfortably settled in. Alexei provided her with a beautiful life. Anton she left, so to speak, for the soul. She did not wait. And she didn't want anything serious from a relationship with her lover. After all, for her it was just another pastime. But things were different for Anton himself. After 4 months of frequent meetings and dates, he began to realize that he was falling in love, and that this relationship, which had begun so easily and naturally, was becoming more serious to him. One day after another intimacy, when they were lying on the bed in his apartment, he emotionally took Diane's hand and said, "Let's you come to my place already." At that moment, the woman froze and blinked frequently, continuing to stare at the ceiling. The joy on her face at such an offer was not readily apparent. In fact, deep down, she was even disappointed. "I'll think about it," she answered with a strained smile after a long silence. He should have ruined everything for him, she thought. She didn't want anything serious with her lover. She was only interested in having fun. And with this suggestion, he put their relationship in question. From that day on, she began to answer his messages less and less frequently. When he called, she did not pick up the phone at all. She dropped the call and wrote that she was very busy. For a while, Anton put it down to various reasons, whether it was a bad mood of his beloved or really busy. But one day, when he had already openly asked her what was going on, she wrote him that she no longer wanted to continue the relationship. After that message, he didn't even have time to ask anything where she had blocked him. Of course, he was uncomfortable with the fact that their relationship was ending so abruptly. But more importantly, he didn't understand why this happened. Everything was going well after all. They were enjoying each other, they were comfortable and happy together. But as soon as he mentioned something more, Diane disappeared. For the next few weeks, Anton could not get the situation out of his head. The relationship that he had invested so much time and energy in had abruptly ended. One day, he met up with an old friend of his from high school. They had not seen Sasha for months because Anton spent all his free time with Diana. "Can you imagine? She left me like a puppy," Anton pronounced. Sasha looked at him and did not dare say what was on his tongue. The fact is that he worked in a bank, and just the other day one of their big clients did not come to them alone, as usual, but with his wife. He had already seen Diane in pictures, so he immediately recognized her in this visitor. "Listen," Sasha began and told him about Diana's deception and the fact that in fact she was married. After this story, Anton sat there like a drowned in water and like a fool, didn't notice anything. "Can you get me her husband's phone number?" Suddenly, he said very seriously. "What is it really against our internal rules?" Sasha hesitated. "Please," Anton said, and after that his friend just nodded silently. The deceived man wanted to get revenge on Diana for arranging such a cruel game with his feelings. At the same time, still deceiving his own spouse. Anton decided to call Alexei and tell them everything, but several times his call was dropped. Then he wrote a text message, which revealed all the facts proving Diana's betrayal. And with a sense of accomplishment, he finally diverted himself to his business. But Anton did not foresee one thing. That evening her husband's phone was in the hands of Diane herself, and she was the first to read these messages. Alexei had nothing to hide. The phone was always lying in a prominent place at home. While her husband was away, Diane quickly got up to speed, deleted all the texts, and blocked Anton from contacting her husband again. Another month passed. Anton was in full confidence that the unfaithful wife had already been shamefully kicked out of the house, thus receiving a just punishment. So he himself had time to calm down internally. But fate presented him with an interesting encounter. After work and a successfully concluded deal, he decided to have dinner at his favorite restaurant. What was his surprise when in this very institution he saw his former lover. And not just one, but with her husband. Anton just exploded. Deep down inside, he had not forgiven Diane, and he really wanted to get back at her. He walked over to the couple's table, took a chair from a nearby table, and unceremoniously sat down next to her. "What do you want?" asked a surprised Alexei. "My name is Anton. Haven't you read my message about your wife?" The lover smiled. "Security," shouted Diane, pale with fear. "Call the guards." "What message? Who are you?" The worried husband did not understand. "I'll show you," Anton answered and took out his phone. Before the guards arrived, he had time to tell and show Alexei everything he wanted. Joint photos of correspondence, the tickets he bought for the two of them for the trip. You could tell by the look on Alexei's face that he was seeing all this for the first time. "She cheated on you for almost 6 months. I didn't even know she was married." "I hope you will act like a reasonable person," said Anton, getting up from the table and heading for the exit. As goodbye, he smiled slyly at Diana, who was sitting there neither alive nor dead. As was to be expected, Alexei, after such convincing evidence, did not believe his wife's excuses. The divorce followed immediately. In an instant, Diana was deprived of her beautiful house, limitless amounts of money, and her usual harmless life. After that, she had to look for a regular job. But her goals for a rich life Diane did not leave, trying to meet promising men. A couple of times she even fell for the tricks of swindlers who only pretended to be rich and successful. However, fate was preparing her many more surprises so that she would learn her life lessons in full.